Our nation did not ask to be put into another Vietnam. Let us not deceive ourselves that we are somehow immune to another Cambodia. Let us stop a reckless, costly war in Iran or Syria before it begins by restoring the checks and balances that our founders so carefully designed.
What will the Senate be without him? 60 years, the longest-serving senator, Senator Byrd, passed away this weekend, leaving many reflecting on his record and some wondering how exactly to remember him. I can think of few people I would rather discuss Robert Byrd's history, legacy, and potential redemption than with our next guest, Walter Mosley. Walter, apart from being the prolific author of more than 30 books, including the famous Easy Rawlins series, is the author most recently of Known to Evil. He has a book coming out in the fall, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray, and he's a columnist at The Nation magazine. Walter, welcome back to GritTV.
It's great to be here.
So, Robert Byrd, long service, remembered more recently for his stirring up the Senate with his stirring speeches against the Bush war on Iraq, but recalled by many, as we look at the obituaries, for his membership in the KKK, his filibuster against the Civil Rights Act, his vote against Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, and even as recently as, well, last year, opposing statehood for D.C. How do you remember him, friend or foe?
Well, you know, I don't think it's so much how I remember him because, you know, he never really represented me, I don't think. But I think that what he does is he represents an attempt at a country to obtain redemption. I think that, you know, whenever you're an elected official, you always, almost always, like 99.9% of the time, represent the climate, the political climate of those people. And as America changed, Byrd changed. He was capable to change along with his constituency, with his nation, etc. And I think that it's a wonderful thing. And the question becomes, is it wonderful about him or is it wonderful about us? I kind of fall more on the side of us. I think as we Americans changed, he took on our coloring.
You write a lot about redemption on the lines and between the lines of your novels. And most recently, I think the Leonard McGill books talk a lot about individual and state redemption. Known to Evil, how does it take the story further?
Well, you know, I always talk about redemption in the same way that Zen Buddhists talk about enlightenment. It's not actually getting there, but it's gesturing toward it. Leonard McGill spent 40 years pretty much as a criminal, and now is trying to make up for that. He knows he can't do it. It's like America. We spent 40, 50 years of criminal activity since sometime after World War II, and now we're trying to make up for it, and it's a very hard thing to do. And my books are more about how difficult it is to get on the right path than actually getting on the right path.
Do you think we're trying as a nation to stay on the right path?
I think fitfully and half-consciously we're trying to do what's right. But still, we have a lot of, you know, knee-jerk Americanisms which kind of keep us from that. This is not that there's not other problems in other nations around the world, which I think there are, but I think that us actually articulating that redemption, that's the most difficult thing, and I don't think we've quite managed
Well,
yet.
talk about it in the light of the week of in light of the week's news. I mean, you had the huge brouhaha around General Stephen McChrystal and his firing, which many people hoped would have been an opportunity for a review of this country's war policy in Afghanistan, a policy that is costing us $1 million a day per, for just a portion of its spending at a time when our needs here are so great.
And their needs are so great, and they don't need our money.
Well, talk
fighting
about it.
there.
I mean, no change really with the replacement of McChrystal.
Well, yeah, I don't think that, Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting about Obama himself. Like you look at him, and he's a moderate. I often think that people ask me about him. I say, well, I'm happy. As an African American, I'm happy for him being president. But I was also happy at Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice. I didn't agree with their political agendas. I agree a little bit more with Obama's, but not enough to say that that I'm a follower. But the real issue is, we, the people, have to get together and make the changes, and we haven't done that yet. We haven't yet taken on the responsibility. We're still criticizing, especially on the left. We're still criticizing. That's all right, but really what we have to do is organize. We have to get away from just being able to point out how bad other people are and really say, well, how bad am I? Where am I? And that's what redemption's like in my books. Leonid McGill doesn't say, well, look at all these bad things these other people are doing. He says, look at all these bad things I've done. How do I make it right? I, not, the nation, the people I voted for, but me. I think that Obama would be happy, as Byrd was happy to change, along with his constituency.
But let's talk about making it right. I mean, you wrote very powerfully about the KKK as a terrorist organization early on, right after 9/11, and your call for the nation to follow the tradition of African Americans in their treatment with attacks upon them, in their response to attacks upon them. Did Byrd make right the terrorist acts committed by the KKK?
No, but he said the right things, and he took the right steps in the same way that Leonid McGill did. And and Leonid in my novels, he knows that his victims are never going to like him, ever. And if the more they find out about him, they might kill him. And all he can say is, I understand that. I understand that these people hate me, but it's my job to attempt to be a better person. I think that's always the thing. The redemption is always about the attempt to be better. Nothing is ever going to exonerate your crimes. Nothing. You might pay for them, you might not, but nothing's going to exonerate them, and that's the issue. Byrd lived with that. LBJ lived with that. You have to live with what you've done.
Barack Obama is living with commentary like this. Here's a few examples from our friends over at The Daily Show. Take a look.
Can the president really afford to be seen as an angry black man?
Can Barack Obama afford to be seen as an angry black man? Larry Wilmore.
Well, John, once again, everybody wants to point the finger at BP.
Now, this is not about BP.
Black people, John.
Oh.
100,000 barrels of oil are flowing into the Gulf every day, and you're worried about this?
He's got to not do so in such a way as to play into any kind of racial stereotyping of the kind that would say, black men especially are hypersexual, hyper-violent, quick to anger, lacking in rationality. Maybe some people even say, lazy, slothful.
Hey, not so fast, one. At least pretend like those were hard to think of.
I mean, this is the height of what Paul Krugman is calling possibly the third depression in our era, an ecological disaster, an economic devastation. And this is the discourse still happening on television. What do we do? You're doing the 10 Things We Can Do series at The Nation magazine. What can we do about coverage like this? Well,
I think that one of the big problems is that the media is part of corporate America. And corporate America has its own agenda. And that isn't the enlightenment, the awareness, or the empowerment of the American people. One of the things that we have to be aware of is that you cannot turn to the media for answers. You cannot expect the media to address the issues of your everyday life. We have to do that. And one of my most recent 10 things was done by Malia Lazu, and she did 10 things you can do to run a grassroots political campaign. And she and I had a discussion about that before she wrote it. And she said, well, do you think I should do this from a left point of view? And I said, no, I don't think so at all. I think that we have to all get together and realize that our problems are all the same. I mean, 99% of everybody's problem, from the far right to the far left, from the black nationalists to the Aryan Brotherhood, are the same. How do you feed your children? How do you get medical care? How do you keep a job? How do you own your own property and, you know, and live in old age with dignity? And these are the issues that you have to have. And so we have to start working together, because every time we work against somebody, we're working at the behest of corporate America. Every time we work against somebody who's on a par with us, we're working at the behest of corporate America.
You recently received the Upton Sinclair Award.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
Well, you know, it was an interesting thing. I've been asked often to talk to organizations that give money to people who need money. And I'm very much against charity. I think that poverty is the great evil and charity is the lesser evil. And that's how we exist. Even that night talking, I was really the only person to talk about revolution. I was the only person to talk about liberation. And the reason that people don't use that kind of language, the people that they don't refer to capitalism, and as I did that night, rampant capitalism, it's because every time you do it, you close doors to money offered by corporate America, but basically to do their bidding. And I think that in their heart, the Liberty Hill organization gives money to political activists in order to make a change and in order to achieve dignity at the same time. That's what's the most important thing. And it's the most difficult because, you know, it feels good, you know, if you see a starving kid and you give him a hamburger. You know, it doesn't help them, but it feels good.
The Liberty Hill Foundation is a community foundation based in Los Angeles. It's been funding grassroots groups. Many of them I saw recently in Detroit at the U.S. Social Forum. Yeah. And they give an award to good works every year. Congratulations on yours.
Well, thank you. You got the same award, right?
We'll link to your Upton Sinclair speech at our website. And people can find it in The Nation magazine. Much more coming up here on GritTV. Thanks, Walter Mosley, for being with us.